places. And so I don't feel, expert on any of this yet, but what I am trying to do is digest as much information and then disseminate it to, in a manner that is helpful to HAYVN members. And questions are welcome, and you can always reach out to me after the presentation. Okay, so here are some of the topics that we'll cover. One is just reviewing that executive order from Governor Lamont. Another is to identify workplace challenges, things I'm hearing about from clients right now, and assessing risks within their contracts that are existing and ongoing. A quick summary, top line of the FFCRA, that's the paid sick leave and the family leave that expands FMLA due to coronavirus issues. And then discuss what happens if you have to close your business temporarily or permanently. How do you reduce your workforce responsibly, and touch on employment benefits? What do you need to offer to those employees? Then we will also touch on remote work policies in case you don't have one, or in case you're working for a company that doesn't have one yet, or that leaves a lot to be desired. And I keep seeing this WFH. I don't know if you've seen that before, but that's work from home, and it's everywhere right now. It's highly applicable to all of us. So right now there are executive orders coming down from Governor Lamont, and from all the governors, but specifically in Connecticut, they're coming down every other day. Every day we have 7A through 7L, and you can read those orders directly on the government site. I put the link in here, and it'll tell you, if you are an essential business or a non-essential business, or if you have essential business functions within your non-essential business, that gives you the ability to keep operating your business. And then we'll go over the legislation. I'm not going to talk about the stimulus package, but the Federal Families First Coronavirus Response Act, the FFCRA, goes into effect next week. So anybody who's employed will have that protection starting April 1. I think it's Wednesday. And you can read about it and read Q&A about it and fast facts on the federal DOL website. It's important to note that it sunsets, so there's an expiration of December 31st, 2020. So it's meant to be temporary. I guess we'll have to see what happens with coronavirus. The messaging, at least from the scientists and medical professionals, is that it's probably a 12 to 18 month period of time when this virus is going to, peak and come down and then reemerge. And so I don't know what's going to happen, but presumably it would. It's an issue. So you've probably heard about all the executive orders in all the news programs, but it's all non-essential businesses in Connecticut right now. They are to reduce their on-site workforce by 100% by 8 p.m. 3/23. So that was Monday evening, 8 p.m. And what does that mean? And how are people still working, right? Well, there's a long list of essential businesses. And then there's also amendments. So 7H is an amendment that came out, maybe it was 7I. So all non-essential retailers to be staffed on site, they're allowed to permit them to work if they're offering remote ordering or delivery or curbside pickup. And also non-essential businesses and nonprofits will allow third parties or on site to the minimum extent necessary to deal with packages, mail, maintenance. So yes, there is this blanket order of all non-essential businesses essentially to not operate, but that's not truly the case. You should read that fine print and see where you fit in and where your services fit in. All right, so some immediate workplace challenges that I'm hearing from my clients, and my clients are small businesses. So they have, let's see, one client has between 12 and 15 employees at any given time. And I can tell you what they're seeing is this a very abrupt decrease in new business development and very abrupt cancellations or postponements in contracts. So they're in software development. You know, as of 2 weeks ago, they had these prioritized contracts, and now they're basically being told to hold off, postpone. So what do you do with that workforce? How do you keep somebody on the payroll when there's no need for them, right? And then what's happening with your workforce who's home supervising children because their schools are closed? What do you do with them? And then you have a certain percent of your workforce that's going to be sick or they're exposed to others who are sick and therefore they are quarantined. So there are these immediate workplace challenges that are that small businesses are faced with, and they need to take immediate action to stay compliant, to retain their workforce, and to keep things going. And one option you have is to temporarily close your business. And so what do you need to do? Well, you need to create a contingency plan. And this is all to minimize your risks, but you need to create a contingency plan for further restrictions. I think we should all anticipate at some point having this kind of strange shelter in place order, and document the losses, like Christine Sullivan was saying a few days ago on her webinar. Document those losses for those aid applications and also for insurance claims, and monitor the state and federal aid packages. The SBA obviously has them. You're going to see more and more information about these packages. You're going to should be considering your options for business loans, credit lines. Ideally, you have a credit line right now if there is a need for it, because it's probably hard to get it now. But that is looking to the future. This is one reason why companies have credit lines just standing there for problems like this. You should check your business interruption insurance coverage. You should call your insurance agent, find out if you have that in your policy, and then you should review the notice requirements and comply with those notice requirements. And you should start reviewing, if you haven't already, your contracts, your ongoing contracts that you're providing service for, and identify potential breaches of contract claims with your counsel, and start thinking about what the defenses could be. Maybe it's a force majeure declaration, or maybe there's another contractual defense or common law defense to non-performance. You're going to assess your risk exposure with these existing contracts, and one way to go about it. I mean, I tend to think that you should approach things from a collaborative standpoint. So I think communicating clearly and often with your business partners to alleviate potential contract disputes is just a smart, cooperative way of handling things. Review your contracts, like I said, and your force majeure provisions. Is pandemic expressly stated? Probably not, but you can be sure moving forward in contracts, that's going to be everywhere. Stay informed of legislation governing your industry. So we have a lot of legislation that's affecting lots of businesses, but I think you should start looking at your industry, stay in touch with your associations to see what is directly going to affect yours. And then start thinking about alternative means of performance, your own performance, or ways that other companies can perform for you that are still within the contractual terms. Sorry. All right, and this is a force majeure checklist, which it's going to mean more to a lawyer, and so I won't bore you with it. But what you should be doing is looking to see if there's an existence of a force majeure provision, which is essentially, I'm sure all of you know, usually an act of God or something outside of your powers happening that isn't. Does it include coronavirus? Could it include coronavirus? Is coronavirus the reason for non-performance? You're going to want to weigh the risk for declaring force majeure. What else does it trigger? Provide timely notice to the other party. Determine how it applies to your own performance obligations. Can you terminate? And determine whether there's a duty to mitigate the impact of the event. And then does it require substantiation if force majeure is declared? All right, well, let's move into, so that took care of, assessing your contract liability. So let's move into this act that was just passed recently, this FFCRA, Families First Coronavirus Response Act. Who does it cover? How is it different from FMLA? Here's how it's different. It lowers the threshold for employee eligibility. You are eligible for paid sick leave the day that they're employed. So whereas previously you had to be employed for a certain period of time, this is instantaneous for paid sick leave and within 30 days for family leave. It adds non-medical reasons for the eligibility. Lots of people are home supervising minor children who are trying to e-learn. That is now a reason for staying home and for being covered under this act. It runs in addition to and not concurrent with existing policies. So this is over and above what your company already offers its employees or what your company offers to you. It expands it, so it offers more paid benefits, and I'll go over the details. And then it also expands the definition of the covered employers, whereas in the past FMLA, federal, it was over 50 employees. Now this is covered. A covered employer is anybody who has under 500 employees, the private. It also affects public, but private employers under 500 employees. And that's a tremendous change. And so these small companies are trying to figure out how on earth are we going to be able to pay for people to stay home. Hence the stimulus package. So here are some of the details. The Act provides that the covered employers must provide to all employees up to 80 hours of paid sick leave at the employee's regular rate of pay. And this is due to being unable to work because they're in quarantine or they're experiencing COVID-19 symptoms and are awaiting a medical diagnosis, or paid sick leave for 80 hours at 2/3 the regular rate of pay because they're unable to work because they're caring for somebody, caring for a child or a family member. Caring for children who are home for reasons related to COVID-19. In addition, a covered employer must provide to employees that is employed for at least 30 days up to an additional 10 weeks of paid expanded family medical leave at 2/3 the rate because they're home because they're caring for a child whose school is closed due to COVID-19. So again, this is over and above what's already offered. It's an expansion of covered employers, and it's an expansion of covered employees. It's pretty widespread. And some issues are really going to be raised about if somebody's home, are they working, right? And can they work? And can they can say, I can't work because I am supervising 5 children and they're e-learning all day long. So I am going to opt into this. I am going to for family medical leave for the next 12 weeks. That is going to happen. I think a lot of people are trying to do everything. And when push comes to shove, I think more and more people are going to be applying for this. So the good news is that there is an exemption out there for small businesses with less than 50 employees. The determining factor, all that we know right now, is whether the compliance with the Act jeopardizes the viability of the business. So it's pretty open-ended. So the bad news is there's not a lot of guidelines yet. So there are going to be more. And so we need to look for them as they come out. I can, disseminate that information to you guys. But whether or not you fall into that exemption, it's the unknown right now. But I would say the direction and the guidance that I'm being given or that I'm hearing from the Connecticut Bar Association is that states and looking they're going to be asking companies to make good faith assessments and to be liberal in their application. And so it's not the time to take a hard line with employees. So what do you do? So they might not be, what do you do with this reduction in workflow and reduction in income? Well, companies are looking at their workforce and they they might not be sick and they might not be staying home with the child, and there might not be any work coming in the door. And so you might have people who are not doing a whole lot. What do you do? What are your options as a responsible and compliant employer? So one option is a layoff, which is a separation of the employment relationship. It's unpaid. You have the possibility, but not the obligation of a company rehiring you, or a company. And employment benefits generally apply. So it's something that will be decided upon on a case-by-case basis, but this is one, you know, reality of today. And what I'm hearing is that there were 3 million, I believe, plus applications or claims made to unemployment for unemployment benefits. It's absolutely unprecedented, but they are taking in more, and so employees are being advised to not hesitate to file these claims, you know, ASAP if they have been laid off. The other option is a furlough, which is slightly different. It is a layoff, but it's more temporary in nature, and the employment relationship stays intact. So the employer still has these obligations to the employee, but the employee does not get paid, and the employee is not working either all or part of the work week. Benefits may or may not apply. It really depends on the set. But you have to be careful with that. I think the expectations are you would take this employee back. And so not knowing what today's climate, you know, what it's going to be like in 3 months, 4 months, it is a risk that you might be, you know, miscommunicating, or there might be a misunderstanding if you furlough an employee, although you might want to retain them as well. So another really favorable option in Connecticut is the shared work program. And you can get more information about this on the Connecticut DOL, Department of Labor site. But this is an alternative to layoffs. And what it does is it's really saying, an employer is saying, I want this employee. I don't want to lose this employee. I would like to retain them. I don't have the workflow. You know, I need to reduce the hours, you know, by X amount, and the reduction of work can't be less than 10% or. And so they go ahead and they reduce it, and that way their payroll is less, the payroll obligations, and then the employee can file for unemployment benefits and make up for that. So still get, in essence, and I don't know if it's a full 100% or if it's 2/3, but they still are able to make up for that loss in income. And it would basically be on a temporary basis. I don't know if there's a maximum number of months, but the idea is to not let them go, to retain them, and to, you know, cover themselves as much as possible, and to help out the employee. So this is available to all employers with 2+ full-time employees or permanent part-time employees. So I would encourage you, if you're in a scenario right now where either, you know, you are the employee and you are feeling like a layoff might happen, or you are the employee and you do the right thing by your employees, this might be the option for you. And unemployment benefits, like I said, they're having so many claims being put through across the country, but this federal stimulus package, it's intended to shore up the states to cover the unemployment claims. So they're offering, from what I'm hearing, interest-free loans to states to help states pay for these benefits. And so this is one way, one method of keeping the companies going and also providing employees with a much needed paycheck. So employers, they're required to give a pink slip, and the pink slip is this packet of information from the Connecticut DOL. The employer has to fill out part of it. The employee fills out part of it. You want to give the employee that packet with your information in it, all filled out on the employer side, and help facilitate. Okay, that now is, like I said, not the time to you really want to help facilitate the process as much as possible. And the Department of Labor will make determinations on a case-by-case basis. And pretty soon there are going to be more and more requirements or more guidelines from the DOL for notification requirements, putting up posters. Now, nobody's working in the workplace, but they will again soon, or essential businesses are at least, and probably putting it somewhere digitally. But the notification requirements are going to be important to comply with. You don't want to give somebody the reason to have a claim against you. And let's just touch on the remote work policy. You might have one, you might not. You might have been in the midst of creating one. It's pretty important to manage expectations and to formulate parameters and to touch on key issues when you have a workforce who is working from home, right? There's going to be cybersecurity concerns, whether or not there's a secured is, you know, a huge concern for companies. Employees might need equipment, they might need tech support in order to really fulfill their obligations. There are going to be data privacy issues. You might start thinking about what document restrictions you want to put on some of your files, whereas you didn't really think about it too much in the past. If it's a different world, and so, you know, password restricted, you know, key documents might be a very, you know, quick and easy way to ensure, you know, some method of security over important documents. You have wage and hour issues when people work from home. So they still need to report their hours worked, especially, you know, the non-exempt hourly workers. You still need to encourage your workers to take meal breaks, to, you know, comply with policies. You're going to want to talk about what your expectations are for their being available to you. Flexibility when they're online or when they read email, all these things, it's best to map it out and finding ways to measure productivity level. And then also, you know, some sort of process for staff communication. That's why I liked yesterday's HAYVN Halftime on Slack. You know, I think this is probably going to really force people, this scenario, this situation, to utilize certain, you know, software and communication tools even more so than in the past. So I'm not seeing, you know, comments or questions, but I know that Felicia probably has access to the chat. And that's really the final slide. There's a lot to cover, and I'm interested to know if there are certain you know, topics here that are particularly relevant to you, your company, your situation, because I'm delve deeper into them. Felicia?
I'm gonna unmute everybody, record this. I'm gonna stop the recording, and then if people have questions,